A teacher follows his best student home one day and discovers a shocking secret. The brilliant teenager is secretly running an underground school for homeless children. But when he sees what's happening inside the boy's own home, he realizes this is just the beginning of a story that will change both their lives forever. Before we start, let us know in the comments where in the world you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe. The squeak of marker against whiteboard filled room 237 of Lincoln High School as Nathan Pierce wrote the day's topic. The Civil Rights Movement, Everyday Heroes. He turned to face his class, immediately noticing the empty seat in the front row where Ethan Wright usually sat, pencil poised and eyes bright with curiosity. Just as Nathan opened his mouth to take attendance, the door creaked open. Ethan slipped in, head down, mumbling an apology. Nathan's greeting died in his throat as he watched his star student shuffle to his seat. Dark circles shadowed the 14-year-old's eyes, his usually neat clothes wrinkled as if he'd slept in them. Today, we're discussing how ordinary people changed the course of history, Nathan began, his eyes lingering on Ethan. The boy was already taking notes, but something was off. His trademark enthusiasm had been replaced by mechanical movements, as if he was running on autopilot. This wasn't the first change Nathan had noticed. Over the past month, Ethan had transformed from an energetic participant to a shadow of himself. His essays were still brilliant, his test scores perfect, but the spark that had made him stand out was dimming. Mr. Pierce? Sarah Chen's raised hand pulled Nathan from his thoughts. You asked about the significance of individual actions? Nathan nodded, forcing himself to focus on the class discussion. But throughout the hour, his attention kept drifting back to Ethan. The boy wore a long-sleeved shirt despite the warm September weather, and when he reached for his textbook, the sleeve rode up slightly, revealing what looked like a darkening bruise. When the bell rang, Ethan packed up with unusual speed. Nathan called out, "Ethan, could you stay a moment?" The boy froze, then slowly turned back. Up close, the shadows under his eyes looked even darker. "Yes, Mr. Pierce? I noticed you've been tired lately." Nathan kept his tone casual. "Everything okay at home?" "Everything's fine." The response came too quickly, too rehearsed. "Dad's just been busy with work, so I've been helping out more." Nathan leaned against his desk, studying the boy who'd impressed him since day one with his insights and compassion. "You know you can talk to me if you need to, right?" Something flickered in Ethan's eyes. Fear? Oh. But it vanished instantly. "Thanks, Mr. Pierce, but I'm fine." "Really?" He glanced at the clock. "I need to go. I have things to do." Nathan watched as Ethan hurried out, his backpack bulging with what seemed like far more books than necessary for homework. Through the classroom window, he saw Ethan check his phone, flinch at whatever message he'd received, then hurry toward the east exit instead of the front doors where the buses waited. The scene tugged at something in Nathan's memory, his own high school days, making excuses, hiding bruises, finding any reason to avoid going home. He'd promised himself back then that if he ever saw another kid showing the same signs. Nathan gathered his things, his decision already made. He knew following a student might cost him his job, might be completely innocent, might be none of his business. But the hollow look in Ethan's eyes haunted him. He couldn't shake the feeling that his star student was drowning, and nobody else had noticed. As he locked his classroom door, Nathan whispered to himself, "I'm sorry, Ethan, but I need to know you're safe." Nathan kept a discreet distance as he followed Ethan's path through the neighborhood. The route led away from the affluent areas where he knew most of his students lived, winding instead through increasingly run-down streets. His concern deepened with each block. Ethan walked quickly, checking his phone periodically, his shoulders tense. Twice he stopped and looked behind him, forcing Nathan to duck into doorways. The boy's paranoid behavior only confirmed Nathan's suspicions that something was terribly wrong. After 15 minutes, Ethan turned down a side street and approached what appeared to be an abandoned community center. The building's brick facade was weathered, windows dusty, with a faded Montgomery Youth Center sign hanging crookedly above the entrance. A padlock secured the front door, but Nathan watched as Ethan circled to a side entrance, producing a key from his pocket. "What are you up to, Ethan?" Nathan muttered, waiting a few minutes before approaching the building himself. As he neared the side door, muffled voices drifted through a cracked window. He moved closer, careful to stay out of sight. "Okay, who can tell me what 7 times 8 is?" Ethan's voice, stronger and more confident than Nathan had heard it in weeks, carried clearly. 56, several young voices called out in unison. "Perfect. Now let's try something harder." Nathan peered through the dirty window, and what he saw made his breath catch. Ethan stood before a makeshift whiteboard, teaching basic multiplication to a group of about 8 children. They sat on mismatched chairs and cushions, some as young as 7 or 8, all wearing clothes that had seen better days. Several had the unmistakable look of homeless children. Unwashed hair, layered clothing despite the warm weather, bags of belongings tucked close to their sides. One little girl raised her hand, speaking with a slight lisp. "Mr. Ethan, can we do reading next? You promised we could finish the story about the lion." "Of course, Lucy. Just a few more math problems, okay?" Ethan's smile, the one that had been absent from Nathan's classroom, lit up his entire face. Nathan watched, amazed as Ethan seamlessly transitioned between subjects, teaching multiplication tables, basic reading, and even a bit of history. The children were engaged, eager to learn, and clearly adored their young teacher. Ethan had created a true classroom in this abandoned building, complete with hand-drawn educational posters on the walls and a small library of textbooks. Now Nathan understood why his backpack was always so full. But there were troubling signs too. Ethan kept checking his phone, growing more anxious each time. When he reached for something on a high shelf, his sleeve rode up, revealing what Nathan now clearly saw was a handprint-shaped bruise on his forearm. As the lesson wrapped up, one of the older boys helped Ethan distribute snacks, simple sandwiches and fruit that Ethan pulled from his backpack. "Remember," Ethan told them, "same time on Thursday. And if anyone needs extra help, I'll be here tomorrow during lunch." "Thanks, Mr. Ethan," the children chorused, gathering their few belongings. Nathan retreated as the children began to leave through various exits. He watched Ethan emerge last, carefully locking the door behind him. The boy's shoulders slumped as he checked his phone one final time, his classroom confidence evaporating. Following his instincts, Nathan decided to continue trailing Ethan. If his student was willing to give so much of himself to help these children, the least Nathan could do was make sure he got home safely. But as Ethan turned toward the wealthy subdivision where the Wrights lived, Nathan's gut told him that home might be the last place his student would find safety. The Wright house loomed at the end of Maple Avenue, its pristine colonial architecture and manicured lawn projecting an image of perfect suburban life. Nathan parked his car a discreet distance away, watching as Ethan hurried up the winding driveway. The boy's earlier confidence had completely vanished, replaced by the same hunched posture Nathan saw at school. A sleek BMW sat in the driveway. Richard Wright was home early. Nathan's stomach tightened as Ethan hesitated at the front door, taking several deep breaths before entering. Everything about the scene felt wrong. Through the large bay windows, Nathan could see movement in what appeared to be the living room. He debated leaving. This was already far beyond appropriate teacher behavior, when raised voices caught his attention. Even from his car, he could hear Richard Wright's booming voice. "Where the hell have you been?" The words carried clearly through an open window. "Answer me." "I was studying at the library," Ethan's voice trembled. "I told you this morning." "Don't lie to me." "Something crashed, probably a book or vase hitting a wall." "Mrs. Henderson saw you downtown, nowhere near the library." "What are you hiding?" Nathan's hands gripped his steering wheel, knuckles white. "You should call the police." But he'd seen enough abuse cases to know that without clear evidence, a prominent businessman's word would carry more weight than a teenager's. "I'm not hiding anything," Ethan's voice grew smaller. Just what? Embarrassing me? Sneaking around? After everything I've done for you since your mother died." Richard's voice dripped with venom. "You're turning out just like her, weak, pathetic, always thinking you know better." Nathan fought the urge to rush in as he heard footsteps, then a thud followed by Ethan's muffled gasp. Through the window, he could see Richard towering over his son, who had stumbled against the wall. "The school called today," Richard continued, his voice deadly quiet now. "Said you've been falling asleep in class. Making me look bad. Is that what you're trying to do?" "No, sir. I'm sorry. I'll do better." "Damn right you will. Give me your phone." Pause. "What's this? Texts about meeting kids? Teaching? You're spending my money on street rats." "They're just kids who need help," Ethan's defense cut off in a yelp. Nathan saw Richard's arm raise, and before he could think better of it, he was out of his car and halfway up the driveway. He raised his fist to pound on the front door when Ethan's next words stopped him cold. "Please, Dad, not the basement. I promise I'll stop. Please." The sound of a door slamming echoed through the house, followed by horrible silence. Nathan stood frozen on the porch, his heart pounding. Inside, he heard the muffled sound of Richard's voice, too quiet to make out the words, then footsteps moving deeper into the house. Nathan returned to his car on shaking legs, his mind racing. He couldn't leave Ethan in that house, but storming in would only make things worse. He needed to be smart about this, needed to find a way to help that wouldn't put Ethan in more danger. As Nathan pulled away, he caught a glimpse of Richard Wright standing at an upstairs window, watching the street with suspicious eyes. Nathan's grip tightened on his steering wheel as he made a silent promise to his student. "I'm going to get you out of there, Ethan. Whatever it takes. I'm telling you, something's seriously wrong in that house." Nathan paced in front of Carol Chen's desk at Child Protective Services, running his fingers through his already disheveled hair. The social worker watched him with practiced patience, her expression neutral as she took notes. "Mr. Pierce, accusations against someone like Richard Wright require substantial evidence. You said you observed this from your car?" "Yes, but..." "So you were parked outside a student's home, following him without parental knowledge or school approval?" Her pen stopped moving. "Do you understand how that could be interpreted?" Nathan sank into the chair across from her desk. "I know how it looks, but Ethan's showing all the classic signs of abuse. The bruises, the long sleeves, the constant exhaustion. Which could also be explained by sports injuries, fashion choices, and typical teenage sleep habits," Carol interrupted gently. "Mr. Wright is a major donor to several children's charities. He sits on the hospital board. His wife's death 3 years ago was tragic, and by all accounts he's been devoted to his son since." "It's an act," Nathan insisted, pulling out his phone. "Look, I took pictures of Ethan's bruises at school when..." "Did you have permission to photograph a minor?" Nathan's words died in his throat. Everything he'd done to help Ethan could be twisted to make him look like the threat. He thought of the basement mentioned in Richard's threats and felt sick. "I can't just do nothing." Carol's expression softened. "Look, I'll open a file. We'll do a home visit, but I have to warn you. If Mr. Wright realizes you've been following his son, he could file a complaint. You could lose your job." "I don't care about my job," Nathan said. "I care about..." His phone buzzed. A text from another teacher. "Ethan Wright absent today. Father called, said he's got the flu." Nathan stood abruptly. "He's missing school. After what I heard yesterday." "Mr. Pierce," Carol's voice was firm. "Let us handle this through proper channels. If you really want to help Ethan, don't give his father ammunition to use against you." Nathan nodded stiffly and left the office, his mind already racing with alternative plans. In the parking lot, he pulled out his phone again, scrolling through local attorney listings. He'd almost selected one to call when another text came through. This one was from an unknown number. "Mr. Pierce, it's Lucy. From Mr. Ethan's class at the old building. He didn't come today. We're worried." Nathan's hands shook as he read the message again. He'd forgotten about the homeless children Ethan taught, forgotten that they had no one else looking out for them either. If Richard had done something to Ethan... His phone buzzed one final time. A picture message from Lucy, Ethan at the community center, sleeve pulled up as he wrote on the whiteboard, the handprint bruise clearly visible. The timestamp showed yesterday's date. "Thank you, Lucy," Nathan whispered. He saved the photo, then dialed the attorney's number. As it rang, he pulled up the school's required reporting forms on his laptop. He'd document everything properly this time. Create a paper trail. Build an ironclad case. But first he had to make sure Ethan was still alive. Nathan sat in his car outside the Wright house for the second time that week, but this time he wasn't hiding. 3 days had passed since Ethan's last appearance at school, and Richard's excuses were wearing thin. No flu could explain why the curtains stayed drawn or why Richard's car hadn't left the driveway in 48 hours. The manila envelope on his passenger seat contained copies of everything. The photo Lucy had sent, his detailed observations, even his own childhood medical records showing similar abuse patterns. His hand trembled as he reached for his phone to make one final call. "Carol? Nathan Pierce again. I'm outside the Wright house. Mr. Pierce, we discussed this. It's been 3 days. Nathan's voice cracked. "The welfare check you sent? Richard Wright convinced your team everything was fine. But Ethan hasn't been seen by anyone. I'm going to that door and I'm not leaving without seeing him." "Don't." Nathan hung up before Carol could finish. The walk to the front door felt longer than before. Nathan's dress shoes crunched on the perfectly maintained gravel driveway. No more sneaking around. He pressed the doorbell and heard it echo inside the house. Footsteps approached. The door opened, revealing Richard Wright in an expensive sweater that couldn't quite hide the whiskey stains on his collar. His eyes narrowed. "Mr. Pierce? What are you doing here?" "I need to see Ethan." Richard's practiced smile didn't reach his eyes. "He's still quite ill. I've kept the school informed." "Now." Nathan stepped forward, forcing Richard to either step back or make contact. I know what you're doing. I grew up with someone like you. The careful bruises. The basement punishments. The public face of concerned father while you terrorize your child behind closed doors. The facade cracked. Richard's smile twisted into something ugly. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I could end your career with one phone call. Try it. Nathan pulled out his phone, showing the photo Lucy had taken. Explain this to the police. To your hospital board. To all those children's charities you fund for show. You're trespassing. Richard started to close the door. Nathan jammed his foot in the gap. Ethan, he shouted into the house. Ethan, if you can hear me. The punch caught him off guard. Nathan stumbled back, tasting blood as Richard advanced onto the porch. I'm calling the police, Richard snarled. Breaking and entering. Stalking a minor. Assault? Do it. Nathan straightened, touching his split lip. Let's get the police involved. Let them ask why Ethan's been missing. Let them search the house. The basement. Something crashed upstairs. Both men froze. Then came the sound of running feet, and Ethan appeared at the top of the stairs behind his father, visible through the open door. His face was bruised, his arm in a makeshift sling. Mr. Pierce? Ethan's voice was hoarse. You came? Of course I did. Nathan's heart broke at the disbelief in the boy's voice. I'm not leaving without you. Richard whirled toward his son. Get back in your room. But Ethan was already moving, half running, half stumbling down the stairs. Richard reached for him, but Nathan was faster. He pulled Ethan behind him, shielding the boy with his body. Touch him again. Nathan's voice was deadly quiet. And nothing, not your money, not your connections, not your lawyers, will save you from what comes next. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Carol must have called them after Nathan hung up. Richard's face contorted with rage as he realized his perfect world was crumbling. He's my son, Richard spat. No. Nathan felt Ethan's grip tighten on his jacket. He was your son. Now he's my student and I'm taking him somewhere safe. The sirens grew closer. Nathan gently guided Ethan toward his car, never turning his back on Richard. It's over, he said as much to Ethan as to Richard. It's finally over. But as police cars rounded the corner, Nathan knew this was just the beginning. The real fight, for custody, for justice, for Ethan's future, was about to begin. And this time they would face it together. You crossed a line, Nathan. Principal Margaret Waters leaned back in her chair, her expression a mixture of concern and disappointment. The board is meeting this afternoon to discuss your future with the school. Nathan sat across from her desk, his tie loosened, dark circles under his eyes matching the fading bruise on his jaw. It had been 3 days since the confrontation at the Wright House. 3 days since Ethan had been placed in emergency foster care. 3 days of endless meetings, paperwork, and questioning. What was I supposed to do? Nathan asked quietly. Leave him there? You were supposed to follow proper procedures. Margaret sighed, pushing a stack of papers across her desk. Richard Wright's lawyers are having a field day. Stalking, harassment, inappropriate relationship with a minor. That's ridiculous and you know it. Of course I know it. Margaret's voice softened. But I also know that Mr. Wright donated the entire west wing of this school. His company employs half our students' parents. The board is terrified of the publicity. Nathan's phone buzzed, another message from Carol Chen at CPS. He ignored it. The last 3 had all said the same thing. Richard was pushing for Ethan's return, claiming temporary emotional distress, promising therapy and changes. How is he? Margaret asked, nodding at the phone. Scared. Lonely. Nathan ran a hand through his hair. The foster family is kind, but he's not allowed to contact his students from the community center. Those kids depended on him and now. A knock interrupted them. Assistant Principal Davis stepped in, his face grim. They're here. Nathan stood as 2 men in suits entered, followed by Carol Chen. The social worker wouldn't meet his eyes. Mr. Pierce, the taller lawyer began, we're here to discuss the allegations you've made against our client, Mr. Wright. We have witnesses who'll testify that you've shown an unusual interest in his son. You mean I noticed the abuse when everyone else looked away? Nathan's voice rose. Let me guess. These witnesses are all on Richard's payroll? Nathan, Carol stepped forward, clutching her files. Please. You're not helping Ethan this way. Not helping? Nathan pulled out his phone, bringing up the photos Lucy had sent. Show them, Carol. Show them what you found in the basement. Tell them about the recordings Ethan made on his phone, the ones Richard didn't know about. The lawyers exchanged glances. Mr. Wright is prepared to be generous, the shorter one said. A private settlement, a letter of recommendation for your next teaching position. Get out. Nathan's voice was ice. Get out before I show these photos to every newspaper in the state. After they left, Margaret walked around her desk and placed a hand on Nathan's shoulder. The board meeting is at 4. I'll fight for you, but... I understand. Nathan stood, gathering his things. But Ethan comes first. He always will. In the hallway he finally checked Carol's latest message. His hands began to shake as he read. Ethan ran away from foster care. Left a note saying he had to check on his students. Richard's men are watching the community center. Get there now. Nathan was running before he finished reading. Behind him, he heard Margaret calling his name, probably reading the same message on her own phone. But he didn't stop. Couldn't stop. He'd promised Ethan he would keep him safe. He'd promised those homeless kids they wouldn't be forgotten. And no matter what it cost him, his job, his reputation, everything he'd built, he would keep those promises. As he sped toward the community center, another text came through. This one from an unknown number. Mr. Pierce, Lucy here. Ethan's with us. Hurry. His dad's men are outside. We're scared. Nathan's car screeched to a halt a block from the community center. 2 black SUVs were parked outside the building. Richard's security team. Through the winter twilight, he could see men in dark suits speaking into earpieces, circling the building like vultures. His phone vibrated. Carol Chin. Called the police. 5 minutes out. Don't do anything stupid. But Nathan was already moving. He knew a back entrance from watching Ethan, a loose board in the fence that led to the building's blind spot. As he slipped through, he heard Lucy's whispered voice from the shadows. Mr. Pierce. Here. The little girl emerged from behind a dumpster, her face streaked with tears. She grabbed his hand, pulling him toward a half-hidden cellar entrance. Ethan's inside, she whispered. He came to warn us, but then those men showed up. He made us hide down here and went up to distract them. Nathan's heart clenched. Even now, Ethan was trying to protect others. How many children are down there? 8. Some of the older kids recorded everything on their phones. The men threatening us, saying Mr. Wright would make sure we all disappeared if we didn't tell them where Ethan was hiding his evidence. Evidence? Of course. Nathan almost smiled. Ethan hadn't run away, he'd come to retrieve something. The cellar was dimly lit by phone screens. Frightened faces looked up as Nathan descended. In the corner, a familiar backpack lay open, stuffed with notebooks. He kept a diary, one of the older boys said, holding up a worn composition book. Dates, times, photographs. He was building a case just like you taught us in history class. About documenting injustice. Footsteps creaked overhead. The children huddled closer together as dust filtered down from the floorboards. Where are the rest of his notebooks? A man's voice demanded. I told you I don't have any notebooks. Ethan's voice was steady, but Nathan could hear the fear underneath. I just came to say goodbye to my students. Your father's very worried about you, Ethan. He just wants you to come home. So he sent armed men to fetch me? To threaten children? Nathan had heard enough. He pulled out his phone, clicking through to its recording function. Everyone with a phone, he whispered to the children, start recording. Every word. Above them, the confrontation continued. Your father made a mistake, the man said. He's willing to make amends. Get counseling. But these accusations, these lies you're spreading, they're not lies. Ethan's voice grew stronger. I have proof. Years of proof. Every bruise, every accident, every time he locked me in the basement. And now I have witnesses. You just threatened a group of homeless children on his orders. How do you think that will play in court? A sharp slap echoed through the floorboards. Several children flinched. Where are the notebooks? The man's voice was steel. Right here. Nathan emerged from the cellar stairwell, phone held high, recording. Behind him, 8 children held up their phones too, all recording. Lucy clutched Ethan's backpack full of evidence. The 2 security men froze. Through the window, red and blue lights began to flash. Step away from my student, Nathan said quietly. The police are almost here and we have everything recorded. Your choice now is simple, face charges for assaulting a minor, or testify against Richard Wright. I'm sure the DA will be very interested in what you know. Ethan took advantage of the men's hesitation to break free, running to Nathan's side. His cheek was red from the slap, but his eyes were bright with triumph. 9 witnesses, Ethan said. 9 recordings. Plus 3 years of documented abuse. He looked up at Nathan. Think that's enough evidence? Sirens wailed outside as Carol Chin arrived with the police. Nathan wrapped an arm around Ethan's shoulders, watching the security men raise their hands and surrender. "More than enough," he said softly. "You did good, kid. Really good." Behind them, Lucy tugged on Nathan's sleeve. "Does this mean Mr. Ethan can teach us again?" "Soon," Nathan promised, watching as police officers swarmed into the building. "Very soon. But first they had a court battle to win. And now, finally, they had the ammunition to fight it." The juvenile courtroom fell silent as Lucy took the stand. At 12 years old, she looked tiny in the witness chair, but her voice rang clear and strong. "Mr. Ethan taught us more than just math and reading," she said, her eyes fixed on Judge Patricia Martinez. "He showed us that someone could care about us even when they had their own problems. Even when it hurt him to help us." Richard Wright's attorney stood, his expensive suit a stark contrast to Lucy's donated clothes. "Objection, Your Honor. This emotional testimony from a homeless child is hardly relevant to." "Overruled." Judge Martinez's eyes narrowed. "Continue, young lady." Lucy pulled something from her pocket, a crumpled piece of paper. "This is the last test Mr. Ethan gave me. I got every question right and he was so proud. But his hands were shaking when he graded it and I saw the bruises. When I asked if he was okay, he just smiled and said, 'Sometimes doing the right thing isn't easy, but that doesn't make it less right.'" In the gallery, Nathan watched Richard Wright's facade crack slightly. The businessman's hands gripped the table, knuckles white. Beside his attorney sat a team of experts, psychologists ready to testify about teenage rebellion, character witnesses prepared to praise Richard's parenting. But they hadn't counted on the children. One by one, Lucy's fellow students took the stand. Some as young as 8, others in their teens, each telling their story of how Ethan had changed their lives. How he'd brought them books and food, taught them to read, helped them believe in themselves. Then came the security team members, their testimony secured through plea deals. They described Richard's escalating obsession with controlling his son, the orders to follow Ethan, to threaten the homeless children, to clean up the basement before CPS visits. Throughout it all, Ethan sat beside his court-appointed guardian, his posture straight but his hands trembling. Nathan ached to offer comfort, but protocol kept them separated during the hearing. Finally, Carol Chin presented the evidence: Ethan's detailed journals, photographs, recordings, medical records showing suspicious injuries explained away by a father's influence. "Your Honor," she concluded, "in 15 years of social work, I've never seen such comprehensive documentation of abuse, nor such a compelling reason to terminate parental rights." Richard Wright took the stand last, his practiced charm in full force. "Everything I did was for Ethan's own good. These accusations, this rebellion, it's all a misunderstanding. I only want what's best for my son." "Like the basement punishments?" Nathan's attorney asked. "Or the night you discovered he was helping homeless children and responded by breaking his arm?" "I never," Richard began, but the attorney was already playing a recording, Ethan's phone capturing the sound of that night, his father's drunken rage, the sickening crack, the screams. Richard's mask shattered. "They were beneath him," he snarled, half rising. "My son associating with street trash, wasting his potential, embarrassing our family name." "Your Honor." Richard's attorney tried to intervene, but it was too late. "Order." Judge Martinez's gavel cracked like thunder. "Mr. Wright, sit down." The judge turned to where Ethan sat. "Young man, would you like to make a statement?" Ethan stood slowly. For a moment he looked at his father, not with fear now but with something like pity. "I used to think I was teaching those kids," he said quietly. "But they taught me something too. They showed me what real family means. It's not about names or reputations or power. It's about love. About helping each other even when it's hard. About doing what's right." He turned to look at Nathan. "Mr. Pierce taught me the same thing. He risked everything to help me just like I tried to help my students. That's the kind of person I want to be. That's the kind of family I choose." Judge Martinez studied the boy for a long moment, then nodded. "I've heard enough. This court will take a brief recess before announcing its decision." As the judge left the chamber, Lucy slipped past the bailiff and ran to Ethan, throwing her arms around him. One by one, the other children joined them, forming a protective circle around their teacher, their friend, their brother in all but blood. Nathan watched through tears as Ethan hugged them back, finally allowing himself to smile. Whatever the judge decided, these bonds couldn't be broken. This family, unconventional, unexpected, unshakable, would survive. The future hung in the balance as they waited for Judge Martinez to return, but for the first time since this battle began, Nathan felt true hope. The tension in the courtroom was palpable as Judge Martinez returned to her seat. Nathan found himself holding his breath, his eyes fixed on Ethan's rigid posture in the front row. The boy's hands were clasped tightly in his lap, knuckles white with anxiety. After reviewing all evidence presented, Judge Martinez began, her voice firm and clear. This court finds the allegations of abuse against Richard Wright to be substantiated beyond any reasonable doubt. Furthermore, Mr. Wright's behavior in this very courtroom has only confirmed his unfitness as a parent. Richard started to rise, but his attorney pulled him back down. The judge continued, her eyes narrowing at the interruption. The documented pattern of physical and emotional abuse, combined with Mr. Wright's attempts to intimidate witnesses, including homeless children, shows a disturbing disregard for not only his son's welfare but for the basic human dignity of others. She turned to where Nathan sat. "Mr. Pierce, please approach the bench." Nathan stood on shaking legs, conscious of every eye in the courtroom following him. The judge studied him carefully before speaking. "Your actions in protecting your student were unconventional and, strictly speaking, outside proper protocols. However, they were also brave, necessary, and ultimately in the best interest of the child." She smiled slightly. "The school board has already reinstated you with full back pay and a formal apology. This court would like to add its own commendation." "Thank you, Your Honor," Nathan managed, his throat tight. "Now," she continued, regarding custody, "given the circumstances, this court hereby terminates Richard Wright's parental rights." She paused as a small gasp rippled through the courtroom. "Furthermore, given the strong bond evidence between Mr. Pierce and the minor, coupled with Mr. Pierce's demonstrated commitment to the child's welfare, I am granting his petition for emergency foster placement, with a path to adoption if both parties desire it." The gavel struck, but Nathan barely heard it over the pounding of his heart. He turned to find Ethan already running toward him. The boy crashed into him with such force that Nathan stumbled back, wrapping his arms around his former student, his foster son. "It's real?" Ethan whispered against Nathan's shirt. "It's really over?" "It's real," Nathan assured him, his own voice thick with emotion. "You're safe now. I promise." Behind them, Richard's voice rose in anger, but it was drowned out by a much sweeter sound, cheering. Lucy and the other children had broken protocol completely, rushing forward to surround Ethan and Nathan in a group hug. Carol Chin watched with tears in her eyes, making no move to stop them. "Order in the court," Judge Martinez called, but her voice was gentle, and Nathan could have sworn he saw her wipe away a tear of her own. As the celebration calmed, Lucy tugged on Ethan's sleeve. "Does this mean you can teach us again?" Before Ethan could answer, Carol stepped forward. "Actually," she said, "I've been talking with the city council. The community center where you've been holding classes? The city's willing to renovate it, make it a legitimate learning center for homeless and at-risk youth." She smiled at Ethan. "They'll need qualified teachers." "But I'm not qualified," Ethan protested. "I'm just a kid." "You're not just anything," Nathan said firmly. "And we'll figure it out together. That's what family does." As they left the courthouse, stepping into the bright afternoon sunlight, Nathan noticed Ethan pause on the steps. The boy was looking back at his father, who was being led away by his attorneys. "Are you okay?" Nathan asked softly. Ethan was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "I used to think he was right, that helping people who had less than us was beneath our family name. But now I understand." He looked at Lucy and the other children, then up at Nathan. "A real family's love grows bigger when it's shared, not smaller." Nathan squeezed his shoulder, fighting back tears as they walked to the car together. The battle was over, but their journey, as father and son, as teachers, as a family, was just beginning. And somewhere in the city, an old community center waited to be transformed, just like the lives of those who would soon fill it with learning, laughter, and love. 6 months later, the transformed Montgomery Youth Center buzzed with activity. Fresh paint brightened the walls, new windows let in streams of sunshine, and the sound of learning filled every corner. In what was once an abandoned building, dozens of children now found hope, education, and family. Nathan leaned against the doorframe of Classroom 3, watching Ethan guide a young boy through a math problem. At 15, his son, the adoption had been finalized last month, had grown inches taller and years wiser. The shadows in his eyes had been replaced by a quiet confidence. "See, Marcus?" Ethan was saying, "Sometimes the hardest part isn't solving the problem, it's believing you can solve it." Nathan smiled, remembering Lucy saying those exact words to a younger student last week. She'd recently been promoted to teaching assistant for the elementary group, her natural leadership finally finding its place. Mr. Pierce? A soft voice pulled him from his thoughts. He turned to find Sarah, one of their newer students, clutching a notebook. Can I talk to you? He recognized the look in her eyes, the same one Ethan had worn all those months ago. Of course. My office. As they walked, Nathan noted Sarah's long sleeves despite the warm weather, the way she flinched at loud noises. His heart ached, but he also felt hope. They knew what to do now, had a whole network in place. Carol Chin had become a frequent visitor to the center, helping them identify and support at-risk children. The local police department had assigned a dedicated liaison. Even Principal Waters stopped by regularly, bringing donations and volunteers from Lincoln High. In Nathan's office, once a storage closet, now a cozy space with comfortable chairs and a safe space sign on the door, Sarah slowly began to tell her story. Nathan listened, took notes, and made the calls that would set help in motion. Later, as the sun set through the new windows, Nathan found Ethan in their favorite spot, the small garden they'd planted in what used to be an empty lot. They often came here to talk, to process, to plan. I saw you with Marcus today, Nathan said, sitting beside his son on the wooden bench. You're good with him. Ethan nodded, watching a butterfly land on one of their tomato plants. He reminds me of me. Scared to trust his own abilities. But he's getting better. Just like you did. Just like we all did. Ethan turned to his father. Did you ever think, that first day you followed me here, that it would turn out like this? Nathan thought about that terrible time, the fear, the uncertainty, the risk. Then he looked at their center, at the children finding safety within its walls, at the boy beside him who had become the son he never knew he needed. No, he admitted. I just knew I had to try. Had to do something. One person can change everything, Ethan quoted, grinning. Isn't that what you always tell us in history class? Speaking of class, Nathan checked his watch. Isn't it time for your evening session? Ethan stood, brushing off his jeans. But instead of heading inside, he hesitated. Dad. The word still made Nathan's heart skip a beat. Yes. Thank you. Not just for saving me, but for helping me save them too. He gestured at the center, at the children visible through the windows. For showing me that family isn't about where you come from, but where you choose to belong. Nathan pulled his son into a hug, blinking back tears. Through the open windows, they could hear Lucy starting the evening lessons, her voice strong and sure. Inside, Sarah was talking with Carol, taking the first steps toward her own healing. In the classroom, Marcus sat straighter, beginning to believe in himself. And in the garden, a father and son held each other, grateful for the chain of choices, courage and love that had brought them all together. Ready to teach? Nathan asked finally, releasing Ethan with a smile. Ethan looked back at the center, their family, their future. Always, he said. After all, there's always more to learn. Together they walked back inside, where hope bloomed as bright as the flowers in their garden, and every day brought new lessons in love, courage, and the power of choosing to do what's right.